Hi friends, welcome to my kitchen. I'm Marcy and I'm excited to share today's recipe with you because I'm making some delicious green chili tortillas using Hatch green chili. I mentioned in my last video that I've been buying these really wonderful green chili tortillas at a local market where I live here in Las Cruces. And Tony and I have been enjoying them so much that finally I asked the guy at the store who makes them how he made them. And he wasn't able to share a recipe with me, but he did give me some very helpful information. Number one, he told me that he uses fresh green chili and not powdered chili. He said that he purees it, and he mentioned that he also added garlic, that he uses butter, and that he also adds a few drops of green food coloring. So with that, I came home and I sort of had a test kitchen going here. I took a few of my tortilla recipes and I tweaked them here and there, and took notes in between the different batches to see what worked and what didn't work. And I'll share some of that with you as we go along. But for now, let's go ahead and just go over the ingredients. We're going to start with 3 cups of all-purpose flour, 1 teaspoon salt, half a teaspoon garlic salt, 1 stick or half a cup of softened butter. You want it to be at room temperature where it's nice and, where when you squeeze it, it kind of moves a little, but you don't want it too melty. And I'm using salted butter, which you might be thinking, that's kind of a lot of salt. But you have to remember that we're having to put enough salt for the masa and also enough salt for the chili. So it's going to work out just right. And speaking of the chili, I'm using 5 Hatch chilies that have been roasted and peeled. And I also removed the seeds. Now, if you're buying a chili in a can or in a jar or maybe in the frozen section, it may already be chopped and it's got seeds in it. You're going to be just fine with that, but you're going to have to keep in mind that there is a lot of liquid there. So that's going to change your amounts of water, which I'll explain as we get to that portion. But I would say it's probably about half a cup of green chili, if that's what you're using. Now I've got 2 cloves of garlic. I've got half a cup of warm water. You want it actually very warm. And again, you may not use it all, but I'll explain as well. And then you'll need a few drops of green food coloring, which gives your tortillas just a little hint of green. You don't want it to be like neon green to look weird, but it does let people know that these tortillas are special and that they have chili in them. But again, that's optional. You don't have to use it. Let's go ahead and get started. I'll first measure out my 3 cups of flour into a large bowl. And I'll add the salt and garlic salt to it and give it a quick mix. I'll then add in the room temperature butter and break it up with my fingertips into the flour until I'm left with a crumbly mixture. Now we're very lightly going to puree the chili. You can use a food processor or a blender, but I'm using my magic bullet because it's such a small amount. And I'm going to go ahead and add the garlic to it. I'm just going to kind of give it a head start by cutting it a tiny bit. And here we're going to add just a little bit of water just to help it get going. So I'm going to use about half of this, so probably about 1/4 of a cup. Maybe a little bit more right there. Now again, very lightly pureeing this. First time I did it, I overly pureed it, and then you couldn't even see that there was any chili in the tortillas. So I'm only gonna pulse it 4 times. And that should be good there. Grab a rubber spatula. Okay, and now we're going to pour this into our flour mixture. I tried this the first time with just 4 chilies, and it wasn't enough, believe it or not, to get as much of the flavor that I wanted. And but then if you add too much, then your tortillas don't hold up. So for whatever reason, 5 was the magic number, and you can taste it a little more. Okay, so that's in there. Okay, now we're gonna take our warm water and we're gonna add the food coloring to it. Now, the first time I tried this, I just added my water, I made my masa, and then I added the food coloring to the masa that was already prepared, and it didn't spread right. It was kind of blotchy, and there were areas that were green and parts that weren't. So I found that if you add the green food coloring directly to the water, that it actually spreads evenly. So I'm gonna add exactly 6 drops. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And I'm going to stir that. Now I'm going to add this to the masa, but we're just going to add it a little at a time because we may not use it all. Now, depending on where you live, the climate, the flour that you use, there's so many different factors that will determine just how much water you need. But I'm going to go ahead and start with this, and it does look kind of crazy at first because it's so dark green. But you add a little at a time, and we're gonna mix that in with the chili. Keep adding. And the reason that you add a little at a time, because you may not need it all, and if you were to pour the whole thing and you're left with like a really, sticky dough, you're gonna end up having to add a lot more flour. Which isn't a problem. I guess, you can always add more. So don't panic if you do add too much liquid. But it's just easier to start with a little bit, and then if you need to add more, you just add a little more water. This masa's coming together. Looks like I may need to add every last drop in here. Just to get this last bit of dried flour. So again, for me, it was half a cup total, but you have to account for the amount that I used to puree the chili. This looks great here. Now, if your dough is really, really sticky, really, really wet, don't panic, because when you knead it, it actually starts to dry out. And I'm gonna knead it for quite a bit. In fact, I'll take it out of the bowl and I'll knead it over here on my board. And you'll wanna knead it for a good 5 minutes or so. And it's gonna soak up all that liquid. This is looking really good. This is what I mean by not overly pureeing your chili, because you wanna still be able to see those little flecks of green chili throughout. The first time that I did it, I overly pureed it, and it was just nothing but like a smooth sauce that blended right in, and it didn't add any texture or any bits of little chili that you could see to your tortilla. Another thing, I mentioned that you want to make sure that your butter is softened and not completely melted, because when it's melted, it becomes too liquidy, and you're gonna need to use way, way less water, and you want your dough to get hydrated. So if you just use softened butter, that accomplishes the trick and still leaves room for the water. Okay, this dough is done. Okay, now we can make what are called testales, which are just the little dough balls. And you just pinch off a little piece, and you should be able to make about a dozen, anywhere from 10 to 12 tortillas. And this is the way my mom taught me when I was little. So it's how I do it. I just pinch off a piece. Here, I'll try to do it a little better for the camera this time. Pinch off a piece, and then with your left hand, you hold it in your palm, and then your right hand, you kind of shape it, pushing it in and rounding the top off. So you're just spinning as you go. Just like that. And it makes it nice and flat and round. Now we just put it back in our bowl and continue with the rest.
Of course, there's more than one way to do this, so find what works for you.
Okay, so mine made 11, with the 11th one being a little itty bitty one. When I was a kid growing up, my mom would always give me the baby tortilla, and it always made me feel so special because I was the baby of the family. Anyway, now we're going to let our dough rest. And it's real important that you do this step, because what happens is when you're kneading your dough, you're stretching and you're pulling and you're creating that gluten that's going every which way. And that just needs to relax. It just needs to just get nice and soft so that when we go to roll our tortillas, it spreads evenly and it just gives us an easier time. Also, what happens during the resting period is that it soaks up all the water and the dough gets fully hydrated. So that's definitely a step that you don't want to skip. Although I'll be real honest with you, my mom never did. She wouldn't let it rest because she was always in a hurry making tortillas, and she would make big stacks of tortillas because we were a big family, and she would make them every single day. And the way she would let them rest, sort of, is that when she would put them in this order, she would start rolling the one that she put down first, and then so on, and going down the same order that she went. That way it had a little bit of resting time as she was getting to each testal. But I'm going to go ahead and cover this with plastic wrap and clean up, and then next step will be rolling them out. Well, it's now been 30 minutes. My dough is fully rested and we're ready to roll out our tortillas. So I'm going to go ahead and heat up my comal. And I like it right around medium high, maybe slightly lower than that, because you want it nice and hot, but again, you don't want to burn your tortillas either. And now I'm going to grab a little bit of flour and I'm going to dust my rolling pin. And at the same time, just put a little bit of flour on my board. Put our first testal, and we can roll. I usually just roll once going up, another going down, and then I flip. If it's not quite round, I just kind of stretch it with my hands where it needs to be a little more circular. Okay. Now we take it over to the comal. And again, stretch it out wherever you think it needs, if it's a little lopsided. You know your comal is hot enough when you hear it sizzle as soon as you drop the tortilla on it. I could barely hear it, so it still needs to heat up a little bit more, but that's going to be fine. I'll just let it cook a little longer.
You'll want to let it cook on one side about 20 to 30 seconds before flipping it over and letting the other side cook a few seconds more. Then take the cooked tortilla and immediately wrap it in a kitchen towel so that it stays hot and soft.
You know, I get asked all the time about where I got my comal, and I always think it's so funny because pretty much everything I own is either a hand-me-down or something I found at the thrift store. Very rarely do I buy something brand new. This comal belonged to my mother when I was a kid, and then when I grew up and moved out of the house, she gave it to me. It's an oldie but goodie. That said, I do have an Amazon storefront where I put in things that I think might be helpful for you if you're looking for them. And that'll be in the description box beneath this video. Nice little air bubble there. Ooh, burning myself. But these are coming along nicely. I mean, look at that. All right, I got the last one, and it's the baby one, which will be perfect for the taste test because it's little, and heaven knows I've been eating way too many tortillas lately. In case you're wondering, when I cook large batches like something like this, since I was experimenting with so many, what I do with all that food when it's just Tony and I at home, I have a nephew who lives close to me, and he's a good eater. So he's kind of my volunteer to eat all the food that I make. These tortillas are all done, and while they're not perfectly round, I can tell you they're perfectly delicious. You can see that they are soft and just spring back. Like you can take this one here, I can fold it up, and it's so soft and easy to work with. It will make wonderful burritos or quesadillas or anything. I'm gonna put some butter on this and give it a taste. Okay, let's give this a taste. They're so delicious. You can really taste the hatch green chili in them, and you can taste a bit of the garlic as well. They're wonderful, but I really hope you try this recipe. It's slightly a little more work than typical tortillas, and rolling them out is a little bit harder too because of the little flecks of the garlic and the chili. So you're not gonna get them like perfectly round, but what do you care about more? The flavor or the way they look? And I think these are just delicious. I really, really hope that you try them and that you love them as much as I do. A lot of times, you ever hate it when you love something so much and so you hype it up and then you show it to your friends and they're like, yeah, it's okay. Oh, right? You hate that, like if you saw a movie or something. But hopefully, when you try these tortillas, they live up to the hype. I think they will.
Thanks so much for checking out this video. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe so you don't miss any of my recipes. I also invite you to follow me at Marcy Inspired on Instagram and Facebook. Until next time, blessings from my kitchen to yours.